Hello, I am Robin and I'm the copywriter here at Kind Community, and this is the Kind Community Show. We share the stories of founders, activists and influencers promoting positivity and protection of our planet, discussing how collaboration can help make this sustainable, attainable and accessible for all. Now, on today's episode, we have Sam Naef, founder and CEO of the Climate App, a behavioural change powerhouse in the palm of your hands. Today, we'll be getting to know Sam, his motivations, and how the Climate App can translate positive peer pressure into positive climate action. Sam, hello. Thank you so much for joining me. It's wonderful to have you here today. How are you?
Pleasure. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Busy as always, but very happy to be here. You guys are doing absolutely great stuff.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, we're going to hear about all the great stuff that you're doing today as well. So we'll jump right into it. Could you just briefly walk us through a bit about what the Climate App plans to do, what it's doing right now, and how it's kind of going to do it?
Sure. So my journey kind of has started about 10 years ago, creating tech for social good. My interest in the climate has, of course, grown massively over the last 2 years, as I'm sure all of you have seen the kind of crazy situation that we found ourselves in. So myself and some entrepreneurial friends got together, started doing live stream events, inviting climate experts from around the world to talk about the matter in association with Extinction Rebellion. Although these talks were very optimistic and positive, we kind of realized that probably people were going and just doing the same things that they always do afterwards. It was all talk and no action. Not anyone's fault, but it's just so difficult to take action sometimes. So there's this gap between people's awareness and people's action. So there's this tool that is missing, and that's in essence what the Climate App is. It's making cutting carbon easy, fun, and social. It leverages positive peer pressure to create a movement of action to protect our planet from climate change. And we're very lucky right now. We've got about 27 volunteers from around the world, all climate activists from America, Asia, Europe, and we've experienced from NASA, Airbus, WhatsApp, Sky, Facebook, the NHS, rapid scale startups. So quite a lot of experience, and we've got a huge support network as well, amazing advisors, etc. And all of our efforts is going into building this movement of action, and via a tool which is the Climate App.
Wow, what a wonderful introduction to it. So I'm assuming that whole idea originated from this kind of need that you sort of pinpointed, that it's quite difficult to sort of make and measure any action, because it's true. Sometimes you go along to these even you're going to a protest and you are out there, feet on the ground physically somewhere, and yet it becomes quite hard to know whether or not change is actually happening, even though you're physically in a place somewhere doing it. So in a way, I guess the Climate App is kind of facilitating that, like you said, a tool.
That's absolutely it. People are doing actions. People are doing them all the time, and one of the inspirations for the project was my best friend who didn't fly for about 7-8 years. No one knew about it, and he reminded me, not too long ago. So I was like, well, we've got to harness all this information. It's so powerful. According to science, if you look at it, the number one reason for behavior change is seeing what your close friends and family are doing, the actions of them. So if we could somehow, record that information, show how each of us affects the wider network, this is going to be really powerful, and that's literally what the Climate App is trying to harness.
Fantastic. And I'm assuming that your personal relationship to sustainability, I guess, originated from that same sort of idea, your close friends and yourself obviously being involved with it. But how early did that start for you, that relationship to sustainability?
I think probably when I was about 8 years old, Glastonbury Festival. I thank Glastonbury Festival for so many things in my life. My awesome family made sure I went there at an early age. But one of the slogans of this festival is "Love the farm, leave no trace." So I've been, most years ever since then. I missed a handful, of course. But that, having all these, kind of very forward-thinking ideas, talking about the climate. We've known about this issue for 50 years. So people have been talking about it for a long time. It's only now that it's getting quite mainstream. So I've got to thank that a lot of time. And then, I went to university in Brighton. This is also another hub of, sustainability and other radical ideas. So it's those two things, and of course, lots of friends and family along the way, and been nudged here and there by films, documentaries, and inspirational people like Greta Thunberg, and countless of other things you can't point a finger at, but many great people.
Yeah, and it's wonderful as well that it started so young for you as well, because I think that's really where it starts to get integrated into your life, those kind of early roots, and then later form such a large part of your life. And it's funny, just on the topic of Glastonbury, without getting sort of too off topic, I find it amazing the amount of things that are left behind, but also the people who will go along and clear it up in these big lines across the fields, picking everything up. And I think there's a few initiatives out there that actually take tents that were left behind, and the muddy dwellies and this kind of thing, and give them to homeless shelters, so that they have some sort of reuse. Because a lot of people, of course, buy them for the event only, and then leave them there, which is a shame. But it's nice to know that things are being reused.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my friends actually has a project, Glastonbury Festival, of taking all the disused tents and reusing them the next year for people. I can't remember the name, unfortunately, so I can't plug it, but look out for those things. But we live in such a wasteful society, and we really need to find circular ways of thinking. That's a great project company we want to partner with soon, called Circular Economy. But that whole way of thinking, there's so much we can do.
Absolutely. So now, aside from the climate app, you've been involved in many interesting projects, and one of these is, of course, 8 billion minds. Could you talk us through a little bit about what that is, and does it have any relation to sustainability?
Very loosely. The idea of 8 billion minds started about 10 years ago when I was privately teaching, and I realized that when I taught, my students' life was changing, in deep one-to-one conversation, but also my own. We can, for me, it's most fun when we're teaching and learning from another human being. I get bored when I read or look at videos for too long, but talking to someone, it brings things to life. So I thought, how can we scale this up? How can we scale up private tuition, but for the world? And that's what 8 billion minds is. It's a live learning platform, the world's first live learning platform. It enables people right around the world to teach and learn from each other, all without money. It's kind of couch surfing for education. So you teach one person, you learn from someone else. So I don't know if there's any science on the sustainability of online learning. I did read somewhere that it does save CO2, but I did read somewhere else that there's a lot of CO2 emitted when we're using video online. But I think as a first premise, it's okay to do online things. Generally, that saves a lot of carbon emissions from physically having to move around. And I think the privilege of being able to talk to someone around the world online is going to advance our society much faster and towards a sustainable one. So we shouldn't really prevent that communication happening at all.
It's an interesting one on the topic of online sustainability and anything digital, because funnily enough, it came up in a conversation last week on the show. I think it's becoming, more people are becoming aware of it, but there is a kind of hidden impact to digital technology, isn't there? And it's funny because you have the very tangible and obvious ones of flying and the big plumes of smoke coming out of chimneys and this sort of thing. But it's funny because you mentioned videos there as being a polluter, and or at least the CO2 generated from streaming. And I seem to remember, I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think YouTube and Vimeo and other kind of streaming services like that contribute the majority of most online carbon emissions, and the same goes for sort of streaming music. So a lot of people recommend downloading music or videos if you're rewatching or re-listening to certain things, so then it's stored locally. Is something with 8 billion minds? Are people able to download and store those things locally, or is that, you know?
Well, it's all live lessons.
Uh-huh.
There's not anything stored at the moment. You know, we're trying to get people to talk to each other through the internet again. You know, there's a lot of static things going on. So we're trying to bring it back to face-to-face learning. I've just done a little research. 1 hour of streaming Netflix is equivalent to 55 grams of CO2. Now, we have a blog on this actually on our website, the Climate App. My initial feeling is that we can tackle that as a second issue. That's still not big compared to the other actions we can do, such as you know, flying and looking at your diet and transport and, you know, insulating and things like this. But it is up to these companies to make sure that they are taking their electricity from sustainable sources. With the Climate App, for instance, we're using a company called 1984 Hosting, which uses carbon neutral servers. So they use geothermal energy and from tidal and I believe wind farms as well. So it's for these companies to make sure that you know, we can make the chain as sustainable as possible. But of course, it's very complicated because, you know, you've got computers all around the world and you've got different server sites, etc. But it's not an issue we're tackling right now with the Climate App.
I've just noticed, based on our last question when we were chatting about camping, Rebecca Heaps has just commented that there are actually some places that do actually clean up. She mentions Camplight. Says Camplight do this.
That's the one. That's my friend runs that one, Camplight. Yeah.
That's the one. Okay, right, there we go. Cool. That's good. We got the name. Thank you to our
good guy.
So it's estimated that there are still at least 250,000 tents, goodness me, that go to landfill each year. Very few tents are taken by charities. Sadly, people think this happens, which means they feel better about leaving their tent. That's true. You know, the Leave No Trace initiative is the best. I haven't heard of that Leave No Trace, apart from when we were sort of talking about it just then. So Camplight is the organisation you were talking about earlier, then?
Absolutely, yeah. It's one I'm sure of many around festivals, and of course we've got to reduce our waste. But you know, that's part of a bigger issue here, that we've got to look at things holistically. And waste is only one issue. You know, physical waste. We've got plastic waste, you know, everywhere in the deepest trenches of the ocean, top of Everest. You know, there's microplastics everywhere. But for me, the issue of cutting our carbon is the first thing we need to do, because if we allow too much into our atmosphere, we're going to hit all of the tipping points. We've already reached one of the tipping points, but we've got to cut that out first of all at source, and then we can start dealing with all of the other waste. Of course, you know, we've got to be talking about all the issues at the same time. But if we reach all these tipping points, we are, you know, effed.
Cool. Well, thank you very much as well, Rebecca Heaps, for sending that information. As our community at work there, so thank you very much. So moving on now, a bit more about you. This question, slightly more personal. And your background is, of course, very varied, and you're decorated with plenty of impressive awards. And it is indeed a list that's a little bit too long to recite here. And you're also a NASA research scholar, which is, it's not every day that you get to be a NASA research scholar. So sort of looking to the stars, do you find inspiration for change? And what has your adoration and study of space taught you about the Earth that we stand on looking up?
Such a great question. And I think the most important thing that I've learned from, you know, I went to something called the International Space University as well. And all of the education, everything you learn about space, we're doing it to help our lives on Earth. And that message gets lost a lot of time, especially when you have people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk doing, you know, trying to go to space and putting their cars out there. But predominantly 99.999% of the work we're doing in space is really to help lives on Earth. It's helping fire up research and speeding up the economy, and all that technology we use in space, we bring it onto Earth, and it's supposed to, help people on Earth. That's the main thing. And then you've got things like the overview effect. So astronauts talk about this when they're in space. They look at Earth and we see that there's no borders, we're all connected. You get some kind of enlightenment experience in which you start to deeply care about people on the planet as a whole, and not looking within your own cultural boundaries at all, and seeing we're all connected. So there's a lot we can use and gain from our exploration in space and our research and putting robots onto other planets, etc. My journey was that probably filtered to me a lot, because I was trying to be an astronaut to get in space myself. I still put in my application. Still wouldn't mind if ESA calls me up. But my mission right now is to make sure that we can save our planet, because if we are going to look back at our species and realize that we messed up our home planet, I mean, that is going to be terrible. When we start to become an interplanetary species, we're all across the solar system and galaxy. If we have destroyed our home planet, we've really not got much chance of being a species that I will be proud of at all. So we've really got to look after this one before we start to colonize Mars, etc., etc. So that has been my journey, which is why all of my efforts and energy has gone into the climate app, making sure that we create this movement of action, this global movement, to make sure that we protect and save this planet first, because otherwise everything else is completely futile, in my opinion.
And it's nice to hear that perspective as well, because like you mentioned right at the start, I think there is that perception where it's okay, well, we're sending things to space and this kind of stuff. So what is that doing then for planet? But there's this technological sort of innovation that's happening there. And there's this sort of sense of discovery. And in a way, our own journey on Earth is a sense of discovery to being more sustainable. Perhaps that overview feeling that you mentioned has some ties there, because it's a really beautiful picture that you paint there, sort of maybe seeing the curvature of the Earth and realizing that there's no borders, realizing the interconnectedness of our world, and thinking, well, the approach that we take to sustainability has to be the same. It can't be this sort of insular silo kind of organization that there is. It has to be this, like you say, a global movement. And I can certainly see how the climate app is then sort of takes that thread of inspiration to build, more of a community, more of a movement from that sense of whole worldliness that I think we often forget, being on the Earth and not being high up and looking down.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much power from showing how our influence on the wider community, and we're not just individuals working on this issue. And that's what, we're at the start of this journey with the app at the moment. We're very focused on your individual actions, but we've started to show the aggregate effect now, to show the impact of all of your followers, and hopefully you can see that any action you've done has influenced this amount of people, and see the issue in a high level holistic effect. But that's the journey we're on.
So, I mean, the climate app is a very interesting one, because it appears as very much a facilitator of change. I mean, it helps us visualize climate action, not least the way it tracks your carbon cutting, but it also leverages the significant power of positive peer pressure. Now, I know you touched on this a bit briefly at the very start, but could you put into perspective how powerful this kind of behavioral change can actually be, and what would be achieved if, say, 1 million people were using the climate app? What kind of change do you think we'd see, and what impact would it have if we had 1-2 million users on the climate app?
Great question. So there's something called the 3.5% rule, which basically means if you get 3.5% of any society doing a certain action or behaving a certain way, that is going to influence the rest of the society. You can't have everyone being experts. So you often have a certain percentage, a few percent of a society being the experts, leading the way, and unconsciously everyone else starts to adopt that behavior as well. And so that's the aim with our app. It is a bit controversial. Some people will see different patterns if you look through history, but generally this has been followed if you see how movements have started. So that's kind of the aim here with the climate app. If we get to about 3.5% of, let's say, UK population, that's about 1.8 million people of possible users. So if we get to 1.8 million people using the app, becoming active users, that will trickle onto the whole of the UK changing. And of course, we're going to replicate that for English-speaking countries, other European countries, and customize the content and challenges within the app to be dedicated to different places around the earth. We see the statistics and we know where we need to get to. According to our projections, we're hoping that after 5 years, we can get to 90 million active users. So of course that's very international at that point, and we're going to have lots of investment and really scale things up as fast as we can internally and externally. And we need all the amazing community to help support us and get us there. But with that kind of numbers, if we get to 90 million after 5 years, we really would have succeeded in building this movement. That is enough people to really change the world. Of course, it's not going to be just one project which solves this. It's going to be lots of different projects calling for movement of action that we've got to team up with. But this is the thing that we really see missing right now. We have so much awareness out there, and people do want to do the right thing, but they often don't know where to start. They think the issue is too big. They don't know who to believe. They don't see anyone else doing it, so why should they? There's something called the 7 psychological myths of climate inaction, or the 7 dragons of climate inaction. 7 reasons why people don't ever do anything, and that's what we're tackling with the climate app. So we battle those within the app, and we get to showcase what everyone's doing, bring it together, show everyone's impact. We can do this. We'll have the tool. We've seen what similar other apps have helped to change behavior. You've got things like Strava, which for me has really helped me do more exercise, just by showing that everyone around me is doing more exercise than I thought they were. That subliminal competition and peer pressure really is powerful. Leveraging things like that and meditation apps, the science is out there that these things work, and the project is all based upon good science, showing the number one reason for behavior change, which is positive peer pressure.
It's very interesting as well, because I think on a local level, noticing people around you, but also localized statistics of things, is a great enabler for change. Because often, and this doesn't only apply to sustainability movement, it's many other crises as well, but when you're faced with these very large statistics, huge numbers, it becomes quite difficult to put in perspective the change that you can make. But it's like you say, if things are on a local level, and even this 3.5% is enough to then tip that balance, and then realize that change is possible on an individual, and then eventually a collective, by its very nature, a collective level. And I wish I could remember the name of the book now. Unfortunately, I can't. Maybe someone in our comments watching will be able to help with this as well. And it talks about how personal, localized stories are the most important for change and for visualizing problems in the first place. And it sounds like the climate app is going to be very well positioned to help with that anyway. I guess it's the foundation upon which a lot of it was built.
I hope so. That's all of our dream, and it all just rests on localizing it, making sure it's really useful for people. At the moment, the app is very UK specific, but compared to the infrastructure of the whole project and the app, it's actually not too difficult to then start localizing it. But we need, if there's anyone watching that wants to get involved as part of different areas, we're looking for people to customize the content and create those challenges and help it grow and reach new areas in the world. So please do get involved.
So there's a lot of dialogue around the climate app and how it's building a movement. one that's powered by hope and driven by necessity. And this is something that we at Kind Community are also, we try to foster, and we share those values very strongly. But for others in the climate action space that are wishing to come together and united with like minds and change makers, then what would be the first steps you would take, or in your own journey, what were the very first steps that you took to sort of get involved with this movement?
Well, anyone watching this now is doing the right thing, I think. Educating yourself, just doing some gentle research online will hopefully start. Talking to other people, is obviously very important. But then you've got to turn that education awareness into action. Otherwise, it's all completely pointless. And you can start really small. Sustainability is not a destination; it's a journey. There are low-hanging fruit actions that you can do right now with very little energy that can actually make a big impact. The Climate App will hopefully show what those things are as well. We kind of label the challenges, if it's a easy, quick thing or top challenge to do. But the important thing is to realize that you do have a big impact. Your lives, each one of our lives, has probably been changed quite significantly by someone else saying one thing at one point or doing one action at one point. And each one of us has that power to influence other people. Some of us forget that. We are all very much connected. That's literally how our species has survived, by making sure that we are, we do depend on the actions of others, and we do get influenced by it quite a lot. So, once the app is out, then obviously use that. That will help as well. But in terms of small tasks or actions that you can do right now, simple things like composting, recycling, or though unfortunately, depending on where you are, sometimes the recycling doesn't actually help so much, but that's another topic. Joining a climate group. On the app, we've got join a local climate group. This is one of the greatest things you can possibly do. Just get in with a nice group. It could be a Greenpeace group, it could be an Extinction Rebellion group. There's a site that perhaps in show notes we can link to, which helps you find this as well. But we've got to not only cut our own individual behaviour, but we've also got to have collective action, which can drive change at organisational level and governmental level to drive policy. And that's what our Climate App will also do. We'll show both of those things, the individual things and the collective things you can do. So we've got to get out there and to attend protests and to inspire others to take action, and particularly people with power. I would say, look at those two things. Look at your products. Can they be sustainable? Can you avoid plastic? Can you look at reuse, refill items? And particularly, number one thing is try not eat meat. And if you really can't avoid meat, then try not eating beef and lamb. That is about 15 times worse than chicken and pork. So I haven't eaten that for 2 years now. If you can, try and avoid flying. It's very difficult. I haven't flown for a couple of years, but I may do one because it's a family's wedding soon, and I'm in Bulgaria now. I wish I could show you. I've got beautiful Bulgarian mountains just above me. Yeah. In a digital nomad entrepreneurial hotspot. It's very nice and cheap, and my carbon emissions is negligible here. I can just cycle everywhere, but also get panniers for your bike. If you have a bike, buy some panniers, put bags on your bike. Now you can just go around and shop with that instead. It makes you feel good. So there's some actions, but start small and try not feel guilty about not doing everything perfectly at the same time. It is a process and a journey, and hopefully with the app, being with others on that journey will make it a lot easier, and you're going to gamify it and make it feel good as well. And and that's one of the main things, that this is probably one of the most important things that we can do right now as human beings, is to not destroy the home of the earth that we're standing on. It's the largest crisis that we're going to face as our species, I think Corona was bad. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, and it's funny because in a way, with coronavirus having to be separated in a way, with climate crisis, we really do have to come together. And I love the fact you mentioned about joining a community, joining a group or some sort of movement nearby, because that really does help alleviate some of that guilt. And I think the other thing is that it means that there are people on that journey with you that support and can share connections with and this kind of stuff. And it's one of the reasons why we do the Kind Community show here, because I think it's about building connections with other people, finding these support networks, learning what other people are doing, and realizing that we could always be doing more, but it's important that we've just all made a start. I think sometimes that guilt can get to us on a very individual level. We think, okay, well, I'm not doing enough. But as a group of people and with those support mechanisms there, and it's a very human thing to feel like you're not doing enough. But with those groups there, that becomes just that little bit easier. And so, yeah, no, I 100% agree. Communities and local groups is a fantastic way to start making change. But on the topic of other groups and things, the Climate App has plenty of other partners, and many of them I had never heard before, and I'm very glad to have now come across. So would you mind just giving our community a little rundown as to what some of these lesser known organizations are doing? I picked out a couple just to start with. There's one called She's Epic. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So She's Epic is a great organization. They're empowering women to become more sustainable. Quite often, women, have a lot of responsibility, particularly in the household. So they're very much focused on them to help them become more sustainable, and that will drive change in households, businesses, and communities. So really cool organization there, and I think they do a lot of consultancy as well. So check them out if that applies to you.
Okay, cool. It's very important that the climate movement is an incredibly intersectional. Well, I think that a lot of the time we don't realize that the issues of sustainability are tackled in a sort of uni-channel way, but really they affect and they exacerbate issues that affect many different diverse groups of people, and the solutions to the climate crisis have to be as equally diverse. So it's wonderful to know that She's Epic is, part of that change. I'm certainly going to go check them out further, and I encourage anyone else watching to do the same. The second group that I came across, which I don't know if I got the wrong perception here, but it certainly seemed a slightly more local and smaller group, but I might be wrong. And that was called the Oak Tree Sustainable Living Centre. I thought it was quite an intriguing name.
Yeah, they help basically local groups and campaigns to become more low carbon and more eco-friendly lives. So it's so they have a lot of outreach with different groups and campaigns. So I don't know the story behind why it's called Oak Tree, but that would be perhaps quite interesting. But
that's something for us to go and discover then.
Yeah, I mean they have a lot of tools and they do a lot of different projects and resources. So I guess if you're if you want help with a campaign or you are a local group then or organization that you want to become low carbon, then get in touch with them.
Cool. Okay. Now, moving on again to the Climate App. Can you imagine a version of the Climate App, or maybe the Climate App just as it is now, for business use? Because we touched on earlier about obviously individual change and coming together as a movement. But could polluting businesses be set challenges in the same way that people have set challenges on the Climate App? Maybe completing them might yield some sort of positive reputation as a sort of leveraging tool for businesses. And is that sort of that big mechanic of the Climate App as positive peer pressure? Is that applicable to organizations, corporate and big businesses as well, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to obviously look at this problem and this issue in a holistic sense. We need to make sure that the app is driving change at the workplace. There are other apps out there which are focused on changing organizations, and that's sometimes their revenue model. We think that it needs to be a very much grassroots, ground up approach. How we're going to then use that to change the workplace, we have some good ideas about it. We need to do a lot of testing to see which ones work. We don't think that it will be a top-down approach where the organization kind of starts preaching about it, but perhaps the employees within that organization are the ones which are helping show the actions and the pressure that they're putting on to drive change. Certainly we're gonna get something to work in there, but we've got to be very careful and make sure we do it in the right way. But certainly there's lots of scope there, because there's a lot of CEOs out there who are doing great things. We've got to make sure that we highlight that, but we also need more pressure and action from internal.
It's an interesting one, because I think some organizations and the more famously polluting ones certainly struggle now to hire new talent to their teams, because people are far more aware, and they sort of realize that these companies, they're not doing all that much for sustainability. And so ultimately it's going to become more than just a sort of reputation problem, but actually a hiring problem and a business model problem for these companies. So those who are not doing anything right now and don't have any plans to, their sort of day of reckoning will eventually come. But it's absolutely right that there are CEOs out there, maybe part of that 3.5% that you mentioned earlier, that are driving that change, are important to highlight, and are obviously going to become leaders in this space, really setting examples for businesses that are like theirs, certainly in terms of business models.
Yeah, there's great organizations, people out there, but also everyone be very careful of the greenwashing. There's significant amounts of that going on, and we try and highlight that in the climate app. Some of the team are really on it with that, and they really show the hypocrisy and sometimes blatant lies of some organizations. So try and do your own, do some research when organizations do say some ludicrous things.
If anyone who's watching has come across any sort of recent greenwashing, please do put it in the chat, and we can call it out and start making some change immediately. So next is a very important question. And I think Rebecca also asked us a little bit earlier on, but I thought we'd wait until we got to it. When can we expect to see the climate app ready to download?
So I have bad news for iPhone users. You're going to have to wait a lot longer. At the moment, it's only for Android, and we expect the idea is right now we're going to do an investment round, and the idea is as soon as that is done, that will pay for enough of us to be working full time to make sure that we can have a really good, successful launch. We're 27 volunteers, but some of us will be doing it full time, almost, for 2.5 years as volunteers. But of course, it's not sustainable when you start having lots of people use something, and the HR involved in lots of users is going to be crazy. So, simple answer: I hope in 2 months. Hopefully less. We're probably going to do it in stealth. We're going to do it very slow at first. We'll put it onto the Play Store, and for the first several months, we're just going to be learning how to improve the product, how to maintain people. We're really not going to push it for growth. We're going to just learn as much as we can, and then at one point, hopefully, people using it will just want to be challenging other people to things on it, and they want to be inviting, showing off their progress, and try and get. And at that point, we know, okay, this is the point where we need to do a proper big public launch. So it's just going to be on the Play Store at first, just for Android, hopefully within 2 months. Join the mailing lists on the climateapp.earth website if you can. Also, if you have any investor friends, or if you're an investor, We're looking for a few more before we do our raise. We've already got several lead investors, but we certainly need some more. So if anyone fancies helping us find investors, or picking up the phone and contacting people, we're always looking for that help. Get in touch. But hopefully within 2 months, people can start using it. And if you're, if you really want to be on the test group as well, we're doing an external test in about 1 week. With it's the first of the large tests, and then we'll probably have one more after that, and then that will trigger it being able to go onto the Play Store. So if you're interested in helping give us feedback, we'd really love that. So get in touch with us. You can email us at hello@theclimateapp.earth, or send us a message through our website, or reach out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. The Climate App. Oh, that was very smooth. At the Climate App, yes.
Yeah.
If you can just reach out to us, we're always looking for testers and for you to get involved in any way.
Cool. Okay, now we're approaching the quickfire round, but just before that, I wanted to know if there's any sort of big changes coming up for the Climate App, and of course you've got your release coming up. But where would you like to see the business in 5, maybe 10 years' time?
Great question. So I think I pointed to a figure earlier, which was about 90 million active users after year 5, which of course will mean we have probably between 50 to 90 full-time staff at that point. We'll have lots of bases around the world. Hopefully, as I see it, we can see the team of the Climate App, these 27 real awesome people who totally made the project. They will be hopefully known as one of many igniters of this movement of action. We know Greta Thunberg was for the movement of awareness, so authentic. And there's a lot of awesome people part of the Climate App project who I hope collectively we can be known as one of an inspirational force or an igniter. But there are plenty of other amazing projects and people around the world. As long as this happens, that's all I think we want. We don't need to be known for it, but I hope that we can definitely play a part in helping kick this thing to happen, and to make it happen much sooner. So I hope that we find our carbon emissions dropping. It's going to be significantly difficult, but lots of potential for great stuff to happen in the next 5 years. This is a moonshot. We managed to do that, make it to the moon in, was it 9 years from when JFK created that moonshot. So hopefully we can do this within the next 6.5 years to make sure that we don't reach all of the tipping points.
Yes, certainly. And I love that phrase as well, being an igniter. I think that's something to spark change and really, like you say, get the ball rolling with things. So we've come to our quickfire round now. Now I encourage you to be as quick as possible in these answers. So without further ado, how do you define sustainability?
Not using too much of your natural resources.
Great answer.
Very simple.
What are you most hopeful for? Oh, sorry.
Very simple definition. I think the Oxford Dictionary would hate me for that one. But yeah.
And what are you most hopeful for?
Succeeding in saving the world as a species, and being proud when I'm older, looking back and facing our kids and grandkids and knowing that we're on the right side of history and we haven't really messed up this planet, because that would not be good.
Who inspires you?
Barack Obama. I think he first, because I'm kind of listening to his audiobook at the moment, but how he manages to stay calm in the most intense, crazy situations. I have so much respect for that. I feel, particularly in America, we've experienced a lot of it in Britain as well, but crazy politics and crazy viewpoints of people you disagree with so much sometimes really gets me. But being able to stay cool and calm and collective and somehow make sure you can, at the end of the day, leave in a good relationship and a progressive one in which you can learn from each other. That he did some great things for that, and many other things that he's done.
Where will you be in 10 years' time?
Probably on Earth. If I'm very lucky in space, hopefully on a green, eco-friendly rocket. But I would probably be doing exactly what I'm doing right now. I think, you know, helping create tech for social good. I think that's me.
Tech for social good. I love that. Now, I guess you kind of answered this question a little bit before, but travel through space to another planet or save this one? What should we do first?
Yeah, I think we have to save this one first. It would be cool to visit another planet, but there's definitely not going to be a return journey anytime soon. And I think we are super lucky with this planet. You know, part of the overview effect is to see how fragile Earth is. It's crazy. We're on this ball, spherical ball floating through space with the thinnest atmosphere. If you look out there, you can, you know, the depth of the atmosphere is just insignificant. It looks like it could just fly away at any time. And you know, as a human species, we're emitting so much carbon every second. If we could visualize all these spherical carbon bubbles going up into the atmosphere, we're really messing up quite quickly. So we are in paradise in the scale of the universe. You know, everything in the universe is trying to kill us. You know, the vacuum of space, the coldness, you know, the heat of volcanoes inside of Earth. We're in such a little pool of sustainability, of life sustainability, that we've got to look after it, and we're so lucky. And I mean, you know, why are we here at all? Why have we got consciousness? It's all a miracle. It's all absolutely incredible. The least we can do is just try to maintain that, and not take a bit too much, you know.
It's true. We have something very special here, and we should not be letting it go easily. We will not give up without fight. Yeah, I love that. I love that sentiment. So that concludes our time today. Sam, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's been really quite inspiring. Could you please let our audience know where to find you and if they can sort of join and collaborate with you? This is obviously your Instagram here. They can get in touch. They can. How are we going to be able to test out the app in the coming weeks?
Yeah, if you just get through to us, you know, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, at the Climate App, or email us hello@theclimateapp.earth, or email me samnaef@gmail.com, SAMNAEF, November Alpha Echo Foxtrot @gmail.com. You know, we'll put you into one of the testing groups. You know, and you can meet some of the other great people on the team. Yeah, we can get you started and show you what we've developed right now. We're hopefully a few days away from finishing some of the last features on the app. It's really exciting. We're literally just linking it up to Facebook login right now, and so we have to go through Facebook authentication process, due diligence, and so that's going to start now. And then we've got one other little bug as well. Or some, a little feature about push notifications, making sure that we don't send too many to annoy people. So we're just kind of finalizing these two things. Then that's going to trigger the mass testing. So the devs on the team are incredible. I mean, you know, it's about 5 people who've been working on this for about a year and a half, all without money. I mean, and they've created an app which probably should cost 100,000. And then you've got the designers who've been doing the same, you know, and then community builders constantly having to, you know, send newsletters, social media posts, reacting, you know, a lot of people putting a lot of time into this. So it's really exciting. So hopefully people like it, but we really do need to have authentic and real feedback. So if you hate it, please let us know as well.
Okay, well, I'll try and get my hands on that as well and give it a test. And please, yeah, anyone else who's watching, do give it a go. Well, thank you so much, Sam. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care now. Thanks for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you, everyone at Kind Community. Awesome questions, and everyone watching. Thanks for being on the right side of history and get in touch if you fancy. But awesome stuff, Robin. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye. Wow, what an inspiring conversation. So if you enjoyed my conversation with Sam today as much as I did, please do share, like, and subscribe for more conversations. We go live every Friday and very much look forward to having you join us next week. Have a wonderful weekend and goodbye.